Credibility for those of you who are not familiar with my journey. So I've been in customer success now for the past 12 years, and I've been at a few different companies. Those logos are at the bottom there, where I've built, scaled, and transformed customer success teams. So whether it's coming into an organization and building CS teams from scratch, coming into an organization where maybe they have account management and we're transitioning it to customer success, or we're scaling it. And so I've helped grow customer success functions from as small as 5 to over 100. And so have a lot of experience doing a ton of different work in different industries. But I think what's really compelling here is what my journey looks like. I know that for so many of you, if you're not currently sitting in the C-suite, you're probably aspiring to hopefully one day get there. And so I just want to share a little bit about my journey, because it did start as a customer success manager. But this is act 2 of my career. Act 1 was I spent a decade in marketing. And so nobody ever really cares about that. But I will say my marketing background has definitely helped me a lot in customer success. But the past 12 years have been in CS. And so I started my career in 2012 as a senior customer success manager and was promoted in that organization a couple different times, where I moved from a senior customer success manager to a director of customer success to a senior director of customer success, all the way up to a VP of practice development and customer success. So really helping build out how we enabled our customers, as well as leading a particular segment of our customer success organization. From there, I moved into another company as their global director of customer success. So I was overseeing all of their strategic accounts globally. So think companies as big as GE, like real, true enterprise organizations. From there, I moved on again and played a VP of customer success role a couple times in different organizations. So started off as a VP of CS at BetterCloud, was the same thing at IntelliShift. And then when I joined Client Success, I joined as their VP of customer success as well. Now, one of the things that I did do, because we should all be our biggest advocates for our own personal growth, is I let Dave Blake, our CEO, know early that I had really big aspirations, and my goal was to eventually make it to the C-suite and to be a chief customer officer. And so after my first year at Client Success, actually a little bit shy of my first year, I had been promoted to chief customer officer. And so that was back in 2022. So I'm approaching the end of my second year as a chief customer officer, and man, I've got some learnings. So let me talk to you a little bit about, before we go into really what the observations were that I made and things that I wish I knew. But I just want to talk about how this looks a little different from the work that I had previously been doing. For many of you, maybe you're currently sitting in a VP of customer success role, or even a director or senior director role. But the work that you're doing at that level can sometimes feel very similar to the work that you're doing as a chief customer officer. But I want to make sure that we're clear in delineating what the differences are. And so as a VP of CS, one of the things that I was responsible for is really the tactical aspect of everything our customers were doing, right? That entire customer lifecycle. Whereas now, even though I do that too, I would say in addition to, I'm now really more focused on the broader strategic vision of understanding what the customer experience is, not just within my organization or what happens post-sale, but for the entire customer lifecycle, right? So think marketing all the way through sales, through customer success, and any other function that is partnering with our customers. As a VP of CS, I was concentrating on like the day-to-day operations, right? I was running my teams, I was running the day-to-day workflows of our customers and how we supported them. And now I'm spending a little bit more time where I'm responsible for shaping our customers' customer-centric strategy, right? So how do all of our cross-functional teams really support customer outcomes and customer centricity across the business, right? How do we all make sure that we're rowing in the same direction? Previously, I was working towards very specific metrics, right? Like retention, whether that be revenue or logo, and focusing on revenue growth. Now, when I think of the KPIs that I'm focused on, they're business KPIs, right? They are not exclusive to the things that are part of my remit. They are really bigger, and they're really focused on aligning on our business strategy. Things like our overall revenue growth, not just the revenue that my organization is responsible for, but even thinking about revenue as a whole, right? With our VP of sales. Also focusing on things like brand loyalty. How are we represented from our customers in the market, and market competitiveness, things like that, right? So going beyond the scope of metrics that I can directly impact. And now I'm actually responsible for and overseeing metrics that go beyond my purview. And then when I think about my reporting structures as a VP of customer success, whether it be at Client Success or other organizations, I was typically reporting to CROs, CPOs, CCOs. I reported to COO. I did report to the CEO early stages, and then obviously we grow, layers are introduced, but usually, and most currently in my role today, I do report to our CEO, right? So those lines of command are a little bit different. So I think it's important to just set the stage here and make sure that we all know what we're talking about, because sometimes it can feel like you're a VP of customer success today and that you are just ready to do this chief customer work, right? Like, yes, I've been doing this for long enough. Put me in the seat, right? Put me in, coach. I'm ready. And sometimes you're just not that prepared. Or, right, you're still learning things. You haven't had those experiences yet. So when I thought about moving and getting promoted to a chief customer officer, right, I was like, oh, I know exactly what my day is going to look like, right? I'm going to be so focused on strategy. I'm going to be working on like coaching and enabling the leaders beneath me so that they can go and emulate and do the work that I need them to do, or the work that I had done previously. And I'm going to be evangelizing customer experience, right? I'm going to be working with all my cross-functional peers, and we're all going to row in the same direction. And our customer is going to be the center of our universe. And those are going to be my 3 areas of focus. And I got to tell you, while these were my responsibilities, the day-to-day execution and what it looks like practically in work is a little different. And so what I'm going to share with you today is 3 things that I wish I had known or had considered when I took this role. And not that I have any regrets, but just things that would have helped probably set me up for success a little differently. So my first gotcha, the responsibilities will look different from company to company. I think I say it depends in every conversation I have with everybody. So I am not sure where I lost myself and didn't think for a moment that regardless of your title, the work is going to look very different depending on your organization. And so while the objective was the same, the day-to-day is very different. Now, I say this because I have the privilege of speaking with chief customer officers all the time. In fact, some of my best friends are chief customer officers. And when I talk to them about the work that they're doing and I compare it to the work that I'm doing, I have like these head-scratching moments where I'm like, well, I don't do that. Or I'm doing this. Why aren't you doing that? Right. And so the reality of it is, even though the title is the same, your responsibilities are going to look very different. So let's unpack this a little bit because I want to give some context. So going back to it depends, right? There are so many variables that you're going to need to consider. So if you are currently a director or a VP, and maybe you're working towards a career trajectory where you're going to inevitably be the CCO in your current company, great. You're going to at least have some context as to where your organization is from a maturation standpoint, what stage, what the market looks like, what your customers need, all of those things. But if you're inevitably going to go to a different company, maybe you apply for a chief customer officer role, great, you get it at another company, you're going to have to anticipate that there is going to be variables that are going to dictate what your role will look like because of what the company needs. Right. I've had the privilege of speaking with CCOs at large Fortune 500, even Fortune 100 companies. And it is very different work than the work that I get to do at client success. So let me give you some context. If you're not familiar with client success, we are a smaller organization, right? So I have probably the smallest team that I've ever led in my professional career in customer success. And the work that I'm responsible for is a little different, right? Because I don't have endless resources. I don't have an ops team. I don't have a data scientist. I don't have layers of leadership. I'm doing a lot of the work myself to achieve the same objectives. And so my day-to-day looks and feels very different. And so not that I would have said, this isn't the work that I want to do, but I think just preparing for the fact that your role and this scope, regardless of title, is going to look different. Now, it's interesting because I feel like the work that I did as a VP of CS, the variations between the companies that I was at with that title, like I mentioned, I did the VP of CS role really at 4 different companies before I had gotten to the chief customer officer role. And I would say that there was less variance in the VP of CS role. I did at different stage companies, different sizes. The work I was responsible felt very similar, right? Obviously some differences, but for the most part, the same. when I had this vision of what the chief customer officer role would look like, and when I spoke to so many people about the work that they were doing, when I took that role on at Client Success, that wasn't my reality, right? So the best advice I can give you here is when you are stepping into that role, just understand that you might have a vision of the work that you would want to do, or even the work you should be doing, but the work that you need to do might be different. So just anticipate that based on your stage, your market, who your customers are, what your customers need, what the rest of the organization is looking like right now, that's going to change. And I will tell you, anybody who's been a chief customer officer in this year, in this market, has probably had to take on a different scoped role than they either were doing before or that they anticipated they'd be doing. So just prepare yourself for that. All right, my second gotcha, right? The pressure and accountability is going to feel different. Even if you were generally responsible for the same things before you got the title. So I will tell you, at Client Success, right? I was the VP of customer success before I took on the CCO role. And I was responsible for a lot of the same metrics, right? The organization didn't change, right? I didn't automatically get to hire 100 people and build out this really complex organization. I didn't get all the resources I would have loved to have had. There wasn't much that changed outside of the scope of my responsibility and what I would be doing in the day-to-day. That said, a lot of the KPIs I was responsible for before were still part of my responsibility today, and the pressure felt very different, right? The KPIs that I was responsible for, maybe my targets didn't change, the numbers didn't change, what we were working towards as a business, those things didn't change. But the minute you step into that C-level role, just your level of accountability and responsibility is so much greater, right? And I don't think this was pressure that I was necessarily only putting on by myself, right? The entire organization was depending on me in a different way. And so I just felt a different weight, right, to deliver in a way that I hadn't before. And so I tried to think of a visual that would best represent what I was feeling. And this was the only thing I can think of. Was like, I need a word cloud. And then I'm going to shove all of the things that keep me up at night into that word cloud. So this is what's going on in my head, right? It's I've got to get things together for board meetings. I've got to figure out like how our customers are they satisfied with us? I'm making sure that kickoff calls are going well, that renewals are happening, that we're forecasting appropriately, that my customers are getting good time to value, that I'm the voice of the customer, right? That I'm managing product requests and managing the roadmap with our teams, logo retention, right? Success, revenue, all these things, right? My head looks like this, and this is what it feels like at this level. And like I said, some of these things were part of my responsibility before. So not a lot changed, but just the pressure that I feel to deliver to all of these folks, it just feels different. And so there wasn't anything that anyone could have said to prepare me for what it would feel like, because it's such a personal thing, right? Because maybe not everyone cares the same amount, or maybe organizations, that you've got different resources or different people or different teams that are carrying the weight of some of these things. But I will say, in my experience, preparing for what this will feel like is as important as understanding the scope of the role and understanding the maturation of the function. It is really critical for you to have some internal conversations, because the title feels nice, right? It's like, oh, great, I made it to the C-suite. Awesome, great. Get to put on your LinkedIn. Everyone wants to celebrate your success. You have to be, I think, emotionally, mentally prepared for what you will be taking on. And it's very different. And I think I glamorize things a little bit more, right? I'm going to be super honest with you all. I glamorize this a little bit. And I was like, this is going to be so great. It's going to be awesome. And here's all the reasons why. And then stepping into that role, I was like, oh my gosh, things are a mess. I'm plugging all these holes. I'm trying to figure things out. I'm doing 100 different things every single day. And so I just want anyone who's considering this role and this opportunity just to be prepared. And I'm not trying to scare anyone away, but really understand what it will feel like to be a chief customer officer, because that's going to look a little different for you all. All right. My third one, and this, I don't know why, again, these are things I feel like, Christy, why didn't I think about these things? So the third one is that everyone does want you to succeed. So what I felt stepping into this role is that like there was this innate celebration that we now have this role, right? But my team, my customers, our leadership, the board, I feel like everyone was really excited that I was stepping into this new role that was created. It hadn't existed before. And there was this real desire for me to succeed. There obviously still is. Everyone still wants me to succeed. But everyone's success is actually dependent on my success. And so going back to the pressure thing, it's this really cool dichotomy that exists because everyone really does want to do the right things, right? Everyone wants to operate with a customer at the center of the organization. Everyone wants our customers to be getting value. Everyone wants retention. Everyone wants growth. Everyone wants advocacy. Every single person in your company wants these things, but making them happen and getting all of your cross-functional teams to operate in a way that actually delivers that is different, right? So despite everyone wanting these things and expectations being super high, every day really feels like a juggling act. Now, let's start with the customers, right? My customers have the same needs that they came into the partnership with, regardless of what title I sat in. But our inability to deliver anything but exceptional experiences and helping them drive value, guess what? The buck stops with me now. I was at a different level of accountability and responsibility for our customers. So making sure that what they needed and their success, that we were delivering that all of the time, they had real expectations that I had to deliver on. And again, not that I wasn't at the VP level, because again, there wasn't a CCO above me before. It just was a different level of responsibility and accountability that existed that my customers were needing and wanting from me. Right now, I think the interesting thing about my role here is that I'm the chief customer officer at a company that works with customer success teams, and my customers are chief customer officers. My customers are VPs of customer success. So they have a different level of expectation for the work that my team does, right? They're expecting that it should be at minimum as good as what they do, but the expectation is that it should be far superior, right? Because we're designing what customer success looks like. So we should be perfect. And I'll tell you, being under a microscope where every email we send, every support ticket we respond to, every renewal conversation we manage, everything we do is being scrutinized at a different level. And knowing that that was my responsibility, that I had to make sure that all those things were happening the right way, the right time, by the right people, is really, really, I think, something that I struggled with at first, because I wanted to be perfect, because I know that we can be, right? And so anytime we were falling short of delivering on the expectations or delivering those experiences for our customers, felt like I was letting the world down. And so going back a little bit to these feelings things, it was really important that you understand what your customers' expectations are so you can design things that really helps execute against that. Now you've got the expectations of your team. Again, you're managing a team before, but at this level, their expectations of you are changing, right? Maybe your expectations of them remain the same. The organization isn't changing, but now they are viewing you and your contributions to the work that they do and the business in a different light. And so for my team, right, it's great. Now that we have somebody at this level, we should be more strategic. Everyone in the organization should be doing things for the customer, right? My leader should be there designing this customer-centric organization. So when things like the product roadmap doesn't deliver on what my customers need, or if sales sells a non-ICP customer, or when my team feels like they're not getting enough of my time and attention for coaching and enablement, right? That falls on me, right? They have higher expectations of me and how we'll need to deliver for them. So this is really something that I had to think differently about at this level, is how am I building an organization, not only to deliver for my customers, but to deliver an exceptional employee experience? Because listen, at this level and at any leadership level, quite frankly, you have a responsibility to your team, to your people. And so that evolved, right? And so their expectations of what they were going to get from me evolved, and I had to meet those. Then you have your leadership team, right? So now I've got my cross-functional peers who are viewing me and the work that I should be doing. Because again, don't forget, my objectives of a CCO, they're the same. I'm still responsible for what a CCO should be doing, but my roles and responsibility and the scope obviously is a little bit different because of the size of my organization, the maturation of our space, all of those things, right? The maturity of our product, all of those things evolve. So I think my leadership team is demanding different things of me as well, right? So I should be able to synthesize customer narratives around the data all the time, right? Every second. I should be able to know what's happening, have my pulse on what's happening. I should also be able to not only act for my customers, but act for the business, right? It's different. I feel like when I was at lower levels of leadership in customer success, I was fighting more for my team and my customers. And now at this level, I have to do that, but I have to do it thoughtfully because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for the business success. So having that new dimension of responsibility and accountability at that level, I couldn't just make decisions based off of what my customers need and want in that moment. I had to be thoughtful about, are the things that I'm doing today actually setting our company up for long-term success, right? Am I helping design an organization that's going to withstand the next 5 years, right? Am I building an organization here that's going to help us get that next round of funding? So there was different priorities that I had at this leadership level that, again, gave you business accountability and not just customer and employee accountability. Then lastly, you have your board, right? And so this was a whole nother dimension here. Now, at a VP level, maybe some of you have had exposure to board meetings, right? Again, depending on the stage of your company and your roles and how organizations are structured, maybe you're attending those. I will tell you, historically, in the organizations I was a part of, the board meetings were reserved really for the C-suite. VPs didn't get to participate in those. Although I got to do all the work preparing for them, I wasn't there telling the story. I wasn't there presenting my case and sharing that information. And so preparing for those conversations and then being part of those conversations is very different. So I was actually just telling Gemma earlier today, I was actually helping one of my customers prepare for their very first board meeting. And I got to help and guide them in ways that I had only wished somebody would have helped and guided me in, right? So I didn't fail miserably and trip up on myself the first couple times. But you have to be able to, again, this isn't about just the data and your customers and their experiences. Yes, all that stuff is important, but now you're managing to investors, right? And they have different expectations of you to deliver, right? So this is something that you're going to want to be able to consider because that changes the dynamic of what you're doing. This goes back to how I'm focusing on the business and not just my customers and not just the employees. Now, one could say, if you focus on your customers and your employees, all the other things should just happen. But there's a lot more to it than that, right? We're all wishful thinkers, but you really do have to be managing the business strategically and be able to manage to the board and their expectations of what you need to deliver as part of their portfolio. So I will just say my third thing was all of the expectations that were with these things in my day to day. It feels like a juggling act, right? Because sometimes I feel like if I'm advocating for my customers, I'm taking away things that, you know, sales needs. If I'm managing my team, I'm not speaking with my customers or I'm not building strategy, right? I always feel like I'm in a constant state of juggling. And so that is something that I feel like I'm still working through and trying to figure out what's the right split. How do I allocate my time appropriately so I'm doing the right things and that everyone feels like they're being serviced appropriately? Because each of these, right, my customers, my team, my leadership, the board, they all need the best of me doing the work that's responsible and accountable to the business. So these are just things that I would have loved to have just thought of differently. Again, these aren't like, oh my gosh, Chrissy, how could you have not thought about these things? Yes, I thought of them, but you don't know until you're actually in the role. Now, I probably could list off a list of 10 of these things, but these were 3 things that I felt like maybe not a lot of people are talking about. Maybe these are personal to me, but these were things that I felt like if I would have just had a better understanding of them, it would help me transition into this role more effectively for myself as well as the teams that I serve. So let's talk about why you want to be a CCO. I think this is really interesting because I see a lot of people that will tell me like, yeah, Chrissy, my next step, I want to be a CCO. And I hear a lot of reasons that, and it's okay to be selfish, but that are seemingly selfish, right? They want the title. They feel like they've paid their dues, right? Like I've done the work. I'm ready for that next step. And I feel like that might not be the best reason for you to want to be a CCO. So if you want to be this role, your why should extend far beyond your own personal goals, right? And the things that you want, your own personal desires. The reason why I wanted to do this and at Client Success is I wanted to have a greater impact. I wanted to do more for my customers. I want to do more for my team. I want to do more for my cross-functional leaderships. I want to do more for the board, right? So for me, the desire didn't come from selfish or personal reasons. It actually came from this greater desire to have and make a bigger impact. So if you are someone who's aspiring to be a CCO, make sure that you're really thinking through your why. Because if you can't really justify a reason that goes beyond your personal desires, I would actually encourage you to pause. Because this role, stepping into it, there is so much more you're responsible and accountable for. And if you stepped into this for the wrong reasons, you're just not going to be that successful. And again, not trying to scare anybody away. And it's okay to have those personal desires. Hey, listen, there is nobody who's been chasing my career goals I think more than me, right? I've been maniacally focused on this. I was like, great, 10 years and I made it to the C-suite. Awesome. I feel like a rock star. And I think initially some of the drivers were selfish, but as you get into the right roles at the right levels and get the right exposure, hopefully those evolve. And so maybe if you're a director today, you're not really thinking through the bigger reasons, but I would really encourage you to do that. Do some soul searching because this role is not something you should be taking lightly. You do have so much responsibility and so much, again, that you're going to be accountable for that this can't be about you. In fact, I think your personal drivers and motivators for taking this role should be the very least things that you're thinking about. So if you want so if I haven't scared you off and you're still interested in building a career path for yourself, I'm going to share with you a couple of things that I think I did well. Some things I did better than others, but things that I did well in helping build my path and my story and really leading before I got the role to help get to this chief customer officer role. So the first thing I feel like I started to do and I made a big shift towards was demonstrating a strategic mindset. It was really important that as I designed things for our customers, that I was thinking about the broader business goals, right? I talked about this. You're no longer just accountable for the same KPIs in your remit, but now I started to try to make decisions that I knew would have a greater impact. So without sometimes doing the work, I like to say, like, you can lead from the front, you can influence things, even if you're not responsible or accountable or can't make the changes, you can influence things. So for me, I started to operate more strategically. I stopped thinking just about selfishly the things that were part of my purview. And I really started to think about the business and making decisions based off of that, right? What were going to be the things that would help us as an organization get to that next level? How should I be designing for the future? It's easy to solve for problems that are right in front of you. But one of the things that I started to shift towards was really thinking about, okay, maybe there's a short-term pain here, but I got to focus on what's going to be the greater good, right? What is going to get us that next level? What's going to help us get to that next $1 million milestone, right? What's going to help us get that next round of funding? So really thinking strategically. The second thing I did, I started to engage our cross-functional peers differently. I probably have not always been the kindest to my sales counterparts if I have to reflect back. And so I'll take accountability for that. I didn't always behave like I should have, right? I was selfish and I wanted to get the things that I wanted. But as I thought about my future, I knew that one of the things that would serve me well was learning how to play nice with others, right? So I started to build cross-functional relationships. I really started to invest in those and partnering with our cross-functional teams, understanding how do I help the product organization? How do I help my sales team? How do I help my marketing team? How do I help our finance team, right? Understanding ways that I can serve those teams actually helped break down barriers and allowed for better collaboration. When they saw me as a servant leader and somebody who is willing to go beyond my priorities and my goals to help us be successful across the organization, I was viewed differently and engaged with differently. So sometimes don't just be selfish and focus on your own business. I mean, sometimes you have to, but other times you don't. And so don't draw hard lines in the sand. Really embrace the folks that you're working with. The third thing, make data-driven decisions. Eliminate the words I feel, I think from your vocabulary. You don't think or feel anything. If the data doesn't tell you it's not true. So I had to learn the hard way. And this was a board meeting where I think I said, like, yeah, like I think that our customers are like wanting this. And I was like, uh-oh. And I quickly had to retract because I don't think anything. My thinking, my thoughts, my feelings, they don't matter. What is the data telling us right now? Obviously, you want to overlay data with customer stories so that people can connect with it, and that's different. That's the storytelling part. But every decision I made had to be backed with real data to justify the decisions. And sometimes those decisions were hard, right? But using the data made my decision making so much better, so much stronger, and so much I trusted. I'm trying to find the right word. People trusted my decision making more because it was based on data, right? So I became this trusted leader in the business. So people start to view me differently. I focused on results, right? And results don't have to be retention and growth. Those are lagging indicators. But I started to focus on everything that I was doing and measuring the success of it. And also measuring the failure, right? If something doesn't work, course correct, really just pivot, change quickly. But I focused on those results. So just as you're working through whatever role you're in, and this does not mean like you have to be at a VP level focusing on these things, do these things, all these things today in whatever role you're in, but really focusing and emphasizing on the track record and my track record of achieving tangible results, right? And obviously if I can go and correlate them and connect them to retention and growth, even better. Number 5, be innovative, right? I didn't want to continue to do the same things that I'd always done, right? I had to think differently about the business and be very creative. So I proposed more things that were thinking about the future and implementing new innovative ideas and approaches to achieving outcomes differently, ways to enhance our customer experience. And it really did showcase my ability to lead and be a thoughtful leader and be a visionary in the business. So people didn't see me as just an executor. They saw me differently as somebody who could be a part of the future and really help guide us in getting us there, right? You want to be on this track with people that you know are going to help pull you forward, not hold you back. So be somebody who's innovative, be somebody who's thinking differently. And the last one is be your customer's advocate. I mean, this is a no-brainer. I think anybody who's sitting in a customer-facing role today knows, or at least should know, that your job is to be your customer's advocate. But I would make sure that I would take customer insights and feedback to every conversation, even our Slack channels, right? I'd get off calls and I'm sharing things directly back with our leadership team, finding ways to just make sure that everything that we're doing, good, bad, or otherwise, was focused on what our customers needed, what they were saying, right? How they were feeling. That was okay because their perception was their reality. So making sure that I was the strongest advocate for them at the most senior level, right? And I was showing how using feedback from our customers helped drive the business forward. So again, if you can do that and then focus on the results that you're seeing, all the better. So if this is a track that you want to put yourself on, here are 6 easy things that you can go start doing today that will help change how you're viewed in your organization. I will tell you, the big thing for me was I wanted people to visualize me in that seat. I wanted them to see that I could be there. I wanted them to see that, they needed me in that role. And by demonstrating that, people were able to visualize that. And so when the conversations came up, it was a no-brainer, right? So don't wait to be in the role to do the work that the role requires. And that's, again, I would say that is just advice in anybody who's trying to get promoted to the next level. All right. I want to talk through this because this is important. Now, there is going to be a need for you to engage with your CRO. And I talked about the relationships you build cross-functionally. I will tell you, this might be the most important one. Now, I can justify why product would be, or why marketing would be, or why finance would be, or your CEO would be. But I will say, focusing on my relationship with sales changed everything for me. It really did. So how can you partner with sales differently or more strategically? First, align on your goals, right? You guys should have shared goals. How you get there is different, but the goals should be the same, right? Your sales team is bringing in revenue. Your job is to keep that revenue, but how you do that and the goals that you align on, having that shared objective is going to really strengthen your partnership. So it doesn't have to be the end revenue goal. It could be other things specifically that you're aligning on, right? Like maybe the goal, a shared goal is, right, making sure that we have the right ICP. Well, guess how do we know that we have the right ICP? Because customer success can tell you who are the most successful customers. What is their profile? What do they look like? So being able to align on certain things that will drive both of your functions forward is going to be really critical to your collaboration. you have to establish a trusted feedback loop. I didn't want to have it on 2 lines here, so I took out the word trusted. So I'm telling you, it's got to be a trusted feedback loop. One of the things that I learned early on is that I could not receive feedback from our sales team when we did not have a trusted relationship, right? I would be defensive. I was not collaborative. I was a wall, right? And for anybody who knows my personality, like I could be a tough wall. So what I have found is that you have to build and establish trust there so you can have an ongoing feedback loop. Hey, this, I saw that this happened. This is the impact of that, right? Like you have to be able to have an ongoing dialogue that feels safe and trusted and that you're both operating with the best intentions. But again, that feedback loop, it has to be constant, but it has to be trusted. So you really have to focus on building the relationship with that leader to establish that loop. Design the right sales strategy. Now, I know many of you are going to be like, listen, I have no influence, Christy. Like my sales team is going to go do what my sales team has to do because the numbers, the board, the CEO, whatever. But there are things that you can do differently, right? How you execute that sales strategy can impact the expectations you're setting with your customers, how you're preparing customers for what's going to happen, right? Like there's so many things that you can do and influence that might change how, not what you do, but how you do it, that might enhance the customers that you're bringing in, their experiences, their preparedness, their like readiness for the partnership, that ongoing thing, right? Establishing what their goals are. So that is something that I feel like I was able to get to a place with, and only after we did the first 2, aligning on goals and establishing that feedback loop, was I able to help influence that strategy, right? Can we bring customer success into that sales process? And if so, what does that look like? And who's involved? Who are we bringing to that conversation? Or how do I train and enable the sales team to talk very thoughtfully and correctly about what CS really does and how we will help? So you can have the right influence when you're establishing those right relationships. And those things will help your customers, which will inevitably help retention and growth, which are your goals. Democratize the data. Number 4. Listen, if you've got your data and your sales is working off of one set of data and you're working off of another set of data and the worlds do not collide, you're doing it wrong. You need to democratize data, right? And democratization of data, it goes beyond just, oh yeah, I have access to their dashboards, or yeah, I can see this. Your teams need to be empowered and educated to use the data to their benefit, right? Like I want my sales team to see what's happening in the customer organization, right? If my customers are churning, I want them to know why, because if they're having sales conversations and they're hearing things that I'm talking about in our churn conversations, or that the churn data is telling us, let's get ahead of it. Right? Or if they're seeing successes from customers, what are my customers doing that are really, that they're super successful with? Like my most successful customers, what did they do differently? And then how can my sales team use that information to go drive more sales? Or if I'm seeing the pipeline is super bloated and all of a sudden all these deals are coming in, how do I prepare my team to take these on? What research or what preparation can we do? Or can we facilitate early work, right? Before contracts are signed? Being able to not only have access and visibility to that data, but to use it strategically to do the right work. And then lastly, focus on customer advocacy. This is the outcome of everybody, right? If my customers, like building them to that state of advocacy, like that is my goal for them, the way that being a trusted advisor is for us, right? That is a customer appointed role. You are not a trusted advisor until your customer says so. But building your customers to that state of advocacy, right? Your sales team benefits, you benefit, everyone in your organization benefits, marketing benefits, finance benefits. When you have customers as your advocates, and if you make that the thing, like that is our holy grail, that is what we're working towards. Sales contributes to that, marketing contributes to that, everybody who's impacting the customer experience contributes to that. If that is your North Star, maybe it's not the metric that you're reporting to the board or that you're responsible for as in terms of a KPI, but if you can focus on that as an objective together, it really changes the dynamic of that partnership. So I'm giving you this advice because I did talk about how important it is to strategically align with your cross-functional peers, but I will tell you, this was the game changer for me. And had I had listened to this advice earlier in my career, I think it would have changed my relationships. It would have changed my outcomes. It would have changed my day-to-day sanity. So there is so much benefit to just getting this relationship right that I really I'm encouraging you all to think differently about how you're establishing that partnership. All right. So if I'm going to give you guys some advice before we go to any Q&A, I'm going to leave you with 4 pieces of advice. 1, ensure open communication channels with everyone, right? Especially your customers. I feel like I had always been very methodical about what I say and how I say it and where I say it. And I think that probably reduced some of the things that I was sharing, right? I probably wasn't sharing everything that I could have or should have because I was being so thoughtful about how I was anticipating how things would be received or how people would interpret things. When I shifted to just being more open about everything and just strengthening those communication channels with everyone, even my customers, right? If we failed, great, let's talk about that. That really changed the trust I was establishing, the relationships that I built with my customers, my team, and my peers, how I was viewed. So if I can encourage you to do something, it's just change your lines of communication, strengthen your communication. The next one, prioritize customer feedback. I already talked about this, but it's not just how you're using it, how your teams are using it. Empower your cross-functional peers to use it. Get everyone starting to look at this data, get them to make decisions based off of it, right? I've got now salespeople who are listening to that feedback and they're changing things that they're doing. I've got product who's reprioritizing roadmaps because of it, right? Just how we build and design our processes, what we're doing and delivering from a marketing standpoint, because it's what our customers need. That is so critical. And if you can actually get all of your customer information and their feedback into the hands of others and empower them to use it strategically to build what they're building, I promise you, you all win. And again, it elevates you because you're the ambassador of that feedback. Third one, get dirty in the data. If you are not a data junkie, you're doing it wrong. I gotta tell you, I'm not a math girl. I hate numbers. They have scared me my whole life. I've had to learn to make peace with that and educate myself on how to use data strategically, thoughtfully, all day, every day, in everything I do. So if you are somebody who, like me, maybe you're data challenged, work on that because everything you should be doing should be done with information about your customers, real, true data, facts, right? Information that's going to empower the right decisions at the right time. It's also going to help support your storytelling. And I will tell you, if you are a leader and you have the ability to really tell great stories, it will, again, that changes everything because you're going to need to tell stories with your customers, to your leadership team, to your board, to your customers, everybody. The ability to tell great stories powerfully, anchoring it on it, drawing emotion, but doing it with data, super powerful. And last thing I'm going to tell you, stay adaptable. When the winds of change blow, adjust the sails. I used to be a very rigid leader and somebody who is not super flexible. And I'd be like, no, this is how we need to do it. And I didn't want to hear anything from anybody, right? Can you imagine working with me? I was probably a nightmare. But I've learned it to be more adaptable and I've learned to be flexible and I've learned that I cannot be married to anything, right? My ideas, my processes, anything that we're doing, just if we need to evolve, if we need to change, I had to be nimble and agile and be flexible. And so if you can do that, I promise you, you're going to continue to grow and build with the business. And hopefully you'll evolve with your organization so they don't see the need to find somebody else to do it, right? Because they're going to be able to see that you can grow, you can change, you can evolve, and you can be what the business needs you to be when the business needs you to be it. So that's my advice to you. That said, that is the end of that. Hopefully this wasn't just too much of me. Maybe this is a little therapy for me. Gosh, I feel like different.
So
I'm just getting it off my shoulders.
It was so great. I've made so many notes and I always do that after I listen to you speak. It's why you're so great. I really liked the piece around finding your why, because I will agree with you. This is a super stressful role, but it's also very lonely. So you have to you find yourself coming back to that.
That's why I go to you, Gemma, because I need friends.
And that's what CS Angel is about, right? Empowering each other. And I also loved what you said about the relationship with the CRO, because gosh, I think that unlocked success in my career when I figured out how to make my counterparts in sales more successful. So